is quite interactive. So it is maybe already part of the discussion. So I hope you will attract a lot of people, and then after that we can still come back to some other points and issues on the discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Start my sharing. There we go. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right, so welcome also from my side. And in the two previous presentations, we learned that quite some technical possibilities are there, and like they're improving every day. Quite excited to hear about tomorrow and the launch of the new satellites as well. But every time there is more to say about farmers and about their lands. And most farmers are not hiding their lands under greenhouses, so everyone is able to see almost everything, right? And space is the limit, or do we consider that's a little bit too far? Yeah. So first of all, let me quickly introduce myself. Not too long. I'm Elise van Tilburg. Studied international land and water management in Wageningen. So that's where you learn how to calculate the exact height of a potato ridge and how far they have to be away from each other. But I thought, how does that really look how does that look from above? So I studied geoinformation science and remote sensing, and I worked for the Netherlands Space Office. So that's a little bit the governmental side, the Dutch Space Agency, and started my own company, Imara, and I'm also lecturing GIS in Wageningen again. But are you aware of the Dutch, we call it the Dutch diamond approach. And it basically shows that any perfect collaboration or any collaboration combines the government, businesses, knowledge institutes, and society organizations. And the downside of such a beautiful diamond is that many moral issues are at stake. And today I will introduce to you some of these moral issues. I'm not giving too much of my own opinion about it because I really would like to learn your opinions about the issues. So space is the limit. And Benjamin and Eric showed us that. High temporal resolution, high spatial resolution, broader bands to look at the Earth. The more we can see, the better, right? That's what everyone would say. But what does that look like? What are we really talking about? Now, don't imagine anything, you being a farmer yet. Just think about your own backyard, for example, your house in your backyard. On a 10-meter Sentinel-2 image that's openly available, you can see this. So, yeah, you can maybe guess it's an urban area, but where it is, what it is, you can't really say. If we zoom in a bit more, so 4.8 meter resolution, you can see a little bit more already, but not too many details. In a triple shot image, so this is 80 centimeter resolution, we can actually see different houses, right? So we can see a little bit of backyards as well. Not too, it's still all right if someone sees this of my backyard, I don't mind too much. If people start seeing this, so a 50 centimeter resolution, well, they can actually see if I park my car in front of my house. It becomes a little bit more personal already. And if you look at an aerial photograph, and this is 10 to 25 centimeters, then you can see even more. And especially when you zoom in, you can see that. And in the Netherlands Space Office, so the Dutch Space Agency, has a satellite data portal. And there you have 50 centimeter resolution data available for 6 times a year. So high spatial resolution, not so much of a high temporal resolution. And this data is freely available for everyone in the Netherlands, or at least as soon as you are a tax-paying citizen, data is available to you. But what do people do with this information? You can, for example, take a look at a very fancy place in the Netherlands. In the north of the country are small islands. But there are also things that you wouldn't think of at first, but what you can actually do too. I don't know if you know our king and where he lives, but he lives somewhere in The Hague in a palace. And this is his backyard. So we can see that as well. Maybe his daughters play tennis, I'm not sure, but some people can feel this as like, okay, I know that he has a big backyard, but quite a lot is visible. And this is another example from a military airport. Yeah, you can see some planes. I don't know too much, it's not my field of expertise, so I'm not sure what plane I see or whatever. But you can imagine that providing these data for free, everything is visible for everyone. And what people want to or even can do with this information, that's a little bit of a guessing. And I have an example story about this image. This is the port of Rotterdam, and I'm not quite sure if this is the exact location where this story comes from. But what happens here is that they collect the oil in the port. So these tanks, they have floating lids. So people were able to see, because of the shadows, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but with a bigger shadow, that means that the lid is closer to the ground, and with hardly any shadow, the lid is floating very high on top. So people, they knew actually how much oil was available in the port, and they would make very wise decisions on when to or when not to buy oil. On the other hand, you can also use satellite information to check certain issues. And yeah, here it seems like there is some dumping in the sea. Might be good, might not be good, but at least it's a place where you can go and check out. And the images you saw before were 50 centimeter resolution images, not the 30 centimeter. Here I took a snapshot from Google Maps of a camping in the Netherlands. And as you can see, you can even see people walking around. You can see some tents and with people in front of it. So yeah, can you imagine what can be done with this information? And also, can you try to guess what people can do in the future with this information? Yeah, now it's not very possible to do much with this. Of course, if you know someone who has a very bright orange tent, at a certain moment in time, you can say something about that person's location on the camping. Not very interesting though. But just try to imagine what people might be able to do with such information. And here I have a statement for you, so I would like some interaction with you as well. Solving societal issues with high-resolution spatial data is more important than privacy concerns. And then I hope, yes, it pops up. So I hope you see it too. And I was wondering if you agree or disagree. Yeah, and I hope this one is not too difficult. Okay, you see quite some, I don't know if you can also see the results, but I see that 54% of you agreed, and so it's almost half-half, right? And I was hoping to see a little bit of division between the answers, because this really depends on your standpoint, and also if you're from the government side of view, if you're from a business side of view, if you're a farmer, if you are whatever point of view you're looking at. And I don't think there is a correct answer, unfortunately, to this question, because the answer probably starts with, well, that depends on, right? And if we go to the next slide, I cannot go. Yes, I have another poll, and that one is high resolution data should be available as open data for everyone in the European Union. So think about the data that Erik and Benjamin talked about to us. Should that be available for everyone for free? And then you can also keep, for example, in mind what happens with the Dutch satellite data portal. That higher resolution data is being bought off by the Dutch government. So you can also imagine that, for example, the European Union or Commission could buy these data from a commercial platform and make them available for European taxpayers, right? So, and I see quite some people, I'm happy to see this, 73% of you agrees and 27% disagrees. And I'm quite interested to see why some people are disagreeing. So maybe we could we could ask that to the people around. And Erik, Benjamin, what is your opinion on this statement?
Yeah, I disagreed because I think that the commercial interaction is also kind of a factor to limit the user group and to know actually the user group if the buyers are not sharing, of course, but that's how you know who's using the data, and that also refers to the question you asked before then. So this is my opinion, not only because I'm sales manager, but also my private opinion on this.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I personally disagree as well. I mean, yeah, we are, or let's say someone has to pay for those kind of imagery, right? So I mean, if the ESA, for instance, is building a satellite that is capable of producing high resolution, or I mean, very, let's say very high resolution imagery. If we were talking about high resolution imagery, if that is a Sentinel, yeah, okay, I would agree with that this should be available for free because the ESA paid that satellite already with tax money. So, but when we are talking about very high resolution imagery, as Benjamin and I have just shown, and these constellations have been built by private companies, I mean, yeah, someone, I guess, has to pay for the imagery. It should not be available for free.
Yeah, and I think that's also a clear, if we look at the diamond again, a clear business side of view, I think, because you can imagine that some societal, yeah, maybe Tama, can we ask someone who agrees on the issue?
Well, maybe to bring a little bit of nuance in this question, if for instance a paying agency buys this commercial data to check on farmers if they are complying with the regulations, should those tiles, those images, then be made available to the farmer as well, just to understand how he is checked, in what way the data is. I think, and that is an important point. Maybe that comes on further. I think there's although the data is very highly of high quality, there is still an interpretation between the data and, for instance, a penalty. And I think you should allow the subject, the farmer, to understand how he is judged and how he is controlled.
Thank you, Thomas.
Maybe there's somebody from the paying agencies that can raise his hand. We can give them the floor. Or if not, then we continue. Maybe later.
Yeah, I think we'll continue, and maybe even during the discussion, this will come back up. Yes. So yeah, personally, this is for me a very favorite province in the Netherlands when it comes to satellite images from agricultural fields. It's the province of Flevoland, and yeah, this is actually very nicely. Very nice fields and very clearly visible. I think the left image is from September and the right image is from March. So what you can really see is different crops are being grown, right? And this is just a normal RGB image. And with the right classification method, you can clearly see which crops are being grown throughout the year on a farm. So what else can you see? You can, for example, and I think one of you already mentioned it before, but you can see some cattle on the field. And maybe in the future, if there are enough daily images, you can even see how many animals are on a field and for how many days in the year. You can also see whether a farmer has plowed their field or not. And I'm not sure what this is in the top, but you can imagine that when a farmer starts building something on his field, you end up with less agricultural land. So that's also quite visible from above. And to the right, you have another example of more than one crop on a field, and or two different colors of flowers. So you can also imagine that to improve biodiversity, farmers have different tracks, different crops. But this is just a farm that I took, and this is already so much that we can see from the field without ever having visited the field. So can you imagine how that feels for a farmer, like walking on his field, knowing that the government is taking a close look at all the actions that he's doing, and also his payment, and we'll come back to that later, is also based on what they see from above. How does that feel if you stand there? And maybe you already recognize some of the CAP items, as I mentioned in the slide before. But the size of farms is one of the ways to get direct support from the EU. So that's also how farmers are being asked to draw their plot of land accurately and to receive funds. But the drawing also leads to quite some errors, and it sounds very easy, right? Drawing your field, but it might be harder than you think because of maybe due to human error, or due to an image not being very clear, or the drawing not very accurate. So there are quite some errors that can be made. If we look, for example, at other policy items, they're dealing with the biodiversity, as I said before, fighting climate change, sustainable use of natural resources. Basically, all these items, they lead to saying, okay, we need to improve our effectivity and our efficiency on the farm. And everything that can help that is more than welcome. So new technologies, super welcome. They track what goes well, what doesn't go well, where in the field can you see which plants are not doing very well, how can I improve? So all this information is being tracked. You can improve the situation as it is by tracking this information, but from who is that information? And if the tractor you drive on a field is collecting information to improve the software on the tractor, but it is your field, is it then your data, or is it from the vehicle seller? And luckily the code of conduct then comes also in place. But if a farmer, for example, is being asked money to obtain the data back about their own fields, would you say that that is ridiculous, or do you say, oh, that's a good business case, right? So the same thing goes a little bit for satellite images. If commercial data for the CAP is being used, do farmers have access to this data and the information on which their subsidy is based on? And who decides this? Do satellite data providers decide this, or national governments, or even the EU? And just imagine that EU is taking they say, okay, you know what, we have the Sentinel data, so we will only use that data with a lower resolution to make our conclusions. Can they even do that, or do they have to use higher resolution because it's available? And now we've only been talking about when things go right and when everyone sees it the way that it is. But what if someone makes a mistake? And I think you all heard of the person who sued TomTom quite some time ago because the person, the voice in the TomTom said, okay, you need to go right. So the person straight away went right. And person didn't really do it. It was like, yeah, the voice said that, so I had to do it. But whose fault is that? Is it from TomTom? Or is it the inability of the person to use the data and the information the right way? And now try to link that back to the CAP and the policy. The inability of a person or an organization to use data or information the right way. So what if a farmer is penalized based on misjudgment in satellite data? Is that the fault of the satellite data provider? Or is it from the organization translating the satellite data into CAP information? Or is it the European Union for even trying all this? And what happens to a farmer? It looks like he or she is committing fraud, but he might not even have done that. So yeah, and fraud, I don't know if you heard the last things in the Netherlands. And fraud is bad. And it can lead to quite some strict measures against the farmer. And issues like that are very sensitive. Here in the Netherlands now, I think the last month especially, it's very much and very often in the news. Parents who didn't pay certain childcare costs, they were called tax frauds and heavily penalized. This result, so now our government is resigned. So you can imagine that data, and especially if it's related to policies, you cannot take it too lightly. It can lead to quite some unexpected results. So another voting moment. The use of remote sensing for CAP will result in a more transparent way of distributing EU support. Ooh. Yeah, I don't really know the correct answer, but I think that we have a very correct answer as a group. I see a lot of people agreeing, and yeah, just thinking out loud a little bit, indeed it might be less prone to human errors, and satellite data on itself is very objective, of course. But also from the translation from satellite data into CAP information, quite some errors can occur. So I'm also quite curious to see why some people disagreed on the fact. Maybe someone wants to explain it in the chat, or not sure if I can. Yeah, I can't really see the chat, so for now I'll just continue.
Yes, Elisa, Volkan here. Maybe I can add something to that. So I disagreed, although I see, of course, the benefits of the use of remote sensing for contributing to transparency. But again, it's also about the interpretation. So of course, it's good to have the facts, but you have to be able to interpret the facts as they are. So there's always a risk that people without any knowledge are going to, well, trying to justify or de-justify something that is not clear because they're not aware of the regulations or they're not aware of other facts that are related to the EU support. So that's why I disagreed, although I see, of course, the benefits.
Yeah, thanks. And indeed, always two sides of a coin. Oh, why does it not work? Yes. And a little bit of a different insight. Would you be allowed to be more tough on areas where you can see that here is air quality, but where air quality is not on point? South Holland, North Holland, in the Netherlands being an example of places that are, well, red is bad in this case, that are not doing very well. But here is the border. And we also see that you have quite some in Germany and in Belgium. So are we really the worst? Maybe not. That's also a way you can look at it and compare between countries. But can you also blame other countries when you can see what they're doing? Here in India, these location points, they are connected to factories, and you clearly see that air quality is related to that. I did have another statement, but I would like to skip this one because maybe this can come back later. But there's one which I find a little bit more interesting. So if it's possible, I would like to skip this and go on to the next. Because I want to talk a little bit about the future and what you can do. Quite some improvements can be done on data management to improve the effectivity and efficiency of farms. You can also try to improve the translation from the satellite data into actual information using the satellites we currently have. We can also bring more satellites into orbit to improve the high resolution, temporal, spatial, or even both. And if we think, well, that's not going to work, we're not going to farm on Earth anymore, we can also go to the moon. Sounds like a faraway idea, but as we speak, people are actually calculating on this. But the last statement, and I find this one quite interesting, investment in data or the data used for CAP monitoring is necessary, even though this money could be distributed directly to farmers. Do you agree or do you disagree? I see many people saying I agree with it, 93%, and 7% disagree. Maybe we can talk about it later. But I'm personally very happy to see that. Well, and also a little bit out of time, but hopefully you all agree on this one, so I don't have any disagrees on this question. But I want to thank you for listening, and also for really interacting with the polls. And I also want to thank you for listening to the issues that most people don't even want to talk about. And keep in mind that every issue has multiple sides. So always keep in mind that diamond and the business side, knowledge institutes, society, and the government. Thank you very much. And now
Thank you, Elise. While the last poll is still going on, whether people have learned something today, I will leave that on a little while. I think what you showed here is that despite the great opportunities and possibilities, there should always be a human conscience about what to do and what you can do with the data. I think what Benjamin and Eric showed is that there are great possibilities already, and even more upcoming, that will benefit a lot of stakeholders. But they can also be, well, for instance, like misinterpretation. They can also lead to undesirable results. Maybe that is a point for discussion, and I'm happy to broaden it up with the audience. There are lots of benefits, and I think one of the issues that you mentioned is that should governments be allowed, or do they want to use all these high resolution data for this control, or should they constrain themselves to the public available data sources? I'm not sure if there's, well, we have Volpin, of course, on board, who is from a paying agency, but I know there are other people from paying agencies as well. So if somebody wants to react on that, let me know. Raise your hand, and we can maybe give you the floor, or type your question in the chat. But I think that there is an interesting issue. How far do you want to go? And I see Mike Jurgensen from Segis. He's a farm organization. You want to go? Please go ahead, Jurgen. Mike, you have to unmute your microphone. We cannot unmute you remotely, unfortunately, or fortunately. Okay, well, we'll wait for Mike to unmute his microphone.
Still nothing, sorry.
Yeah,
maybe ahead. I'm here now. Am I here now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, my opinion is that there should be equal opportunity for the farmer to see the data. So as long as the farmer and the authorities are looking at the same data, that should be okay. But if the government is looking at one data set and the farmer does not have this data set available, then it would not be okay. That's my opinion, of course, sitting as I do in a farmers organization.
Yeah. Can you, Mike, I think you're from Denmark.
I am.
Can you elaborate a little bit on how the situation in Denmark is at this moment with the availability of data?
The situation is that a farmer can go to a public website and put his application for EU subsidies on the same map as, or same aerial photograph, this being orthophotos, not satellite photos. So he can see the orthophoto that the government or the authorities, the EU authorities are looking at. So he has an equal opportunity there. Then we do use satellite monitoring for certain tasks as cutting of grass and such. And the farmer there will be sent the imagery. So that is also available. Unfortunately, private companies that are building software cannot see for free the same aerial photographs as the governmental sites show. So the companies taking the photos are actually making money twice, one selling to the authorities and one selling to us who build the software.
Yeah,
but there is a possibility for the farmer to see the data, and that is very important to us.
Yeah, this brings me to a very thank you, Mike, for your comment. This brings me to a very interesting point, because indeed the aerial photographs are mostly taken once a year or maybe twice a year. But both Eric and Benjamin, you presented the ability to look at farms every day, basically. Can you comment maybe on that? Is how does this improvement, and especially I think Eric, you call it the cadence, or the temporal resolution, how is that affecting business? Do you have any ideas about that?
I mean, yeah, this high frequency or cadence of the imagery, I mean, definitely, I mean, it always depends on the use case, right? So, I mean, a farmer definitely doesn't need an image every day to manage his field in a better way, right? So, but certain crop management activities have to be done in a short time frame, or at around a certain crop development stage. So that means there's only a short time window available, and the higher the cadence of the satellite imagery is, the bigger the chance to have an image when it's really needed, right? And when you see that from this, let's say, paying agency perspective, so when they have to evaluate the management practice of a field, so done by the farmer, they also require a lot of data so that they don't miss a critical date where something happened on the field, right? So, I mean, something that should have happened, or something maybe the farmer should not have done. So, so that means the frequency or cadence of the imagery is very important in the whole context, I would say. I mean, not for field boundary extraction, yeah, because I mean, this was one other topic. So if the farmer has to draw his field, yeah, it's probably better to do that on a very high spatial resolution image, like an aerial photograph. And there it's maybe not a big issue. I mean, it can be an issue as well, but not a big issue if that is taken only once or twice a year, right? Or something like that.
Benjamin?
Yes, I can strongly agree. So it always depends on the use case and of the crops planted. Like an olive tree, if you want to measure the height of olive tree, you don't need to measure it every day. But also, if there's an incident in the field, like a hailstorm or something, then it's important to cover it right after the event. So the more revisit time you have per day or per week, the higher the chance to cover the area after the incident or after the point of time you need it. So I think the temporal resolution, when we say several times per day, it's not very important to the farmer all over the year, but on special occasions it's needed. So and we can't set the satellite on standby during the rest of the year. So we have the temporal resolution throughout the year. So that's
one thing that keeps bothering me the whole webinar, more or less. You're very much talking about the optical information, reflectance from solar radiation. Are you also interested in or working on radar solutions, especially to avoid this cloud cover, but also to reveal other things like soil moisture and those kind of things?
Like we as a satellite provider, or
yes, yeah,
I think there's a different kind of field, and we already have a lot to do with optical satellites. So I think we leave this to other providers, and but it's also, as you said, it's an important field, and I think if you use both, we use both in many projects with partners, like for maritime monitoring, we have a partner who uses then the radar part, and to take a closer look, they need the very high resolution data.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I completely agree. So the combination of optic and radar has great potential, even though the interpretation of radar data is yeah, quite or a little bit more complicated than interpretation of optical imagery. So, but yeah, I mean, we as Planet, we operate an optical constellation, but there are other providers that try to build also some similar constellations for radar imagery. So maybe if you have a daily cadence of radar imagery and daily optical, you can combine those to come up with a much more accurate product at the end.
Excellent, thank you. Henk, are there other questions in the Q&A that needs answering now?
Yeah, I'm here. Well, you did a good job, Thomas, by summarizing them yourself, and so there's not much left, I would say. There's one that's interesting. That's about the traceability. So we talked about crop and crop stages, and there's a question out: could this information be used to trace and traceability management of products? That's a question to both Benjamin and Erica, I would say.
I don't know if I got the question correctly. What do you want to trace?
Well, the traceability, I expected this on traceability of the products that are produced on parcels on farms. Can satellite information be used to give information on the origin of products or things like that? Is it something that you focus on?
I mean, we as Planet see ourselves as an image provider. So we are selling our imagery to, let's say, service providers for the ag business. And I mean, they can create maps, and of course they can store the maps, and that you can trace also all the imagery that they have used, because they buy imagery from us, and every product they get from us has a certain ID. So you can trace back what imagery they used, and their clients can also probably reach out to this service provider and trace back all the information they have, or the process that they have applied on our imagery to retrieve the results, right? Is that answering your question, or?
Well, I think it does. You actually said it's not a concern of the providers, but more of the people that use your information. That is my summary of your answer, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. There's one specific from an anonymous attendee. How do livestock farmers can use the satellite data to monitor animal health? I think that's the same story, same answer. It's also a question.
Yeah. You can clearly see on satellite imagery livestock, like take a cow, for example, and you can count them on a field. And if you have a high temporal resolution, you can also see how they move. And well, the health, well, if an animal does not move for a certain time, it's probably not healthy anymore. So, but you can't really see the heartbeat of an animal, or how his fur develops. But I think it's a good tool for estimation. Like if you can't monitor a big, if you have 2,000 animals, you can't count them every day, but you can count them via AI and using satellite data. So I think that's the approach there. But health in, like, if you think of health in a human way or something, you can't really measure the health of an individual animal.
Okay, I'll pick a last one up, Thomas. It's a question. I'll try to translate. What kind of farmers do you think can better grasp the opportunities offered by these applications of space data? Have you some thoughts about that? Is it the high-tech farmers or low-tech farmers?
Well, both. I think satellite imagery provides a huge benefit to farmers who have big fields, huge fields where you can't go into your field and see there's damage or the plants are healthy. And if you simply have not the time or the human resources to do it. So I think big farmers, and this results, I think, then to, in nowadays, high-tech farmers, like you named them. So I think this is the field satellite images give the most benefit to.
Okay, thank you. I think this sums it up, Thomas.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Henk. Yeah, we've done our best to answer all the questions that are available. If you have more questions afterwards, I think both Eric and Benjamin and also Elise are available for direct contacting. We will make all presentations available on our on the CAPIGI website, of course, after consultation of the presenters, and also the recordings will be there for people to relive this webinar. Benjamin, Eric, Elise, thank you very much for your introductions. I think what we've done today is show what kind of capabilities satellite data have and will have in the near future. That is definitely getting close to what people might find infringing their perimeter, their privacy. But nevertheless, these capabilities are there. The options are there, and I think we started the discussion. How much do you want to do as an organization with those kind of data? I think the discussion also showed that there are some people who are very much in favor of sharing those data also with the farmers, in this case, with the subjects that are controlled, and at least to create an equal playing field between the government and the farmer. And I think this will continue. There's a lot of talk and discussion, I think, about using those data also in combination with other data sources, in combination with artificial intelligence and ways to fast analyze these kind of data. And I think the message of today is that there's a lot of things are possible, a lot of things we can do, but let's keep a close eye on the boundaries of what is desirable and needed. And I think I would like to finish with a big thanks to our supporters and organizers. First of all, of course, the CAPIGI Foundation is very much obliged to Eurovision as a company. And then we have NIVA, the project that is supporting this webinar as well. I think that's very useful, and please also visit the website of those. ICON as an important sponsor of the CAPIGI Foundation, but also Planet, European Space Imaging, John Deere, NEO, and of course the other organizations. And we work together with some media as well to share our findings and publications with a larger audience. So with that, I would like to thank you all very much for participating in this webinar. We didn't make it until 12:30 exactly, but it's 1, 2, 3, 4 on my clock, so that's also a more nice number. Thank you very much for participating, and I'm looking forward to see you on the next occasion, hopefully a live event. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.